Well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Savant. We're broadcasting live from the Phoenix, Arizona, KXXT Family Values Radio, and I want to welcome everyone online on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I want to give a big shout out to Beyond Fear to Freedom, one of the best Christ-centered fellowships that provide a safe and loving community for women in recovery. Just check out their website at Beyond Fear to Freedom. And don't forget, if you want to write Steve Savant, write him my email, steve@180uturn.com. That's steve@180youturn.com. And I love to talk about it. Shelve the theological questions. I really, they're going to feel last on my list to answer. Today on 180, I have a huge story. Blake Dallariva. Blake, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
glad to have you. And she comes so highly recommended by so many people that we know. And her story, her change, honestly, your conversion is kind of a collision with God.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is not something you were looking for.
No, not at all.
I just want to tell you, and there's some nice articles out on you, Blake. I saw this, but I was kind of surprised because when I read your story, and we're going to have to go to some bad boy areas here to really let people know what you've been through. But I'm really surprised. Your upbringing seemed to be okay here.
Yeah.
Talk about Flag, living up in Flagstaff, Arizona. It seems like a pretty nice place.
Yeah, it was nice. It was very small. It was a smaller town, and there really wasn't much to do there but, sports or outdoor activities and, party, really. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in a good home. I had a really great family. They provided for me well. I played tons of sports as a kid, mm-hmm. and had pretty decent relationships with my family, from the outside. Mm-hmm. And yeah. Now,
it's not a religious family.
Nope, not at all. Nope.
And your family, from a point of view, wasn't really they don't traffic in emotions very well. It's hard to communicate. So when you said that, when I first read your story, I'm thinking, like, how does that actually demonstrate itself in the everyday life?
Yeah, they were great parents, but they just didn't know how to kind of help me walk through life as I continued to mm-hmm. grow into young adulthood and being a teenager. They didn't know how to kind of guide me and mm-hmm. show me how to when you're upset or when you're angry or when you're feeling all these emotions, mm-hmm. how to deal with them. And I kind of just had to hang on to one emotion, and that was anger.
Now, I noticed that you said, though, that some sports, to talk about, like, were you in basketball or volleyball? What were you into?
The main sport was soccer, but I pretty much played everything under the mm-hmm. sun. I was in gymnastics, I did basketball, softball, volleyball, everything.
And you were decent at it?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so, I'm asking, do you think sports sometimes can take the edge off emotional trauma, like maybe you're angry or whatever, can take a little bit off the edge?
Yeah, absolutely. The anger, especially the soccer, helped with the anger because I could attack mm-hmm. and I could, slide tackle people, and it was a way to get out my aggression without getting it out in a super negative way.
Did you get a lot of penalties for your little sliding?
I did.
Yeah. Okay, well, you strike me as a person not to be quibbed with. So,
yeah.
All right, so when I'm looking at these things, I know that sports can be a help, but it can't take care of everything, especially if it's so deep down in your soul. And you wonder, good family and everything else, how is this not being unattended? How is mom and dad not picking up on this anger?
Well, they did, but neither one of them knew how to handle it because that's how my dad, I grew up watching him have anger. Mm-hmm. And they just thought I was just being a brat or, mm-hmm. Being a teenager. But they never really tried to understand me and never tried to, sympathize or empathize mm-hmm. with what I might be going through.
I want to talk about two things for the remainder of our segment because I think people are dealing with this. It's difficult. Most of the gals I've met, whether in jail or in prison, state or federal, a good number of these girls have went through eating disorders.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how did you first wake up and say, hey, or did you even know you had a problem?
Oh, when I was in gymnastics, I was about 8 years old, and we had the little leotards that we had to wear, and I've always been, more developed and just kind of bigger than my other classmates or whatever, and I remember just having like a little roll on my stomach, and I just would obsess about it, and I would be so upset with myself, like, why don't I look like the other girls? Mm-hmm. Why do I have this? And that's where it just spiraled for me. I never felt good enough. I always felt like I was so angry at myself for not being like the perfect, for not being perfect, for not being what I thought everyone else was looking like.
I'm just asking, do you think that's self-imposed?
Yeah, I've always had extremely high expectations on myself.
Yeah, well, how do you get that?
Well, I believe it's from my mom, because she had pretty high expectations of herself, and I grew up seeing her call herself fat, and always obsessed with her weight, always being on a diet or trying to lose weight, and I became obsessed with that because when I saw my mom, I'm like, well, she's beautiful, you know, but her saying, oh, I'm fat, I need to lose weight, it was like, well, then if you think you're fat, then I must be, because, you know, and I think it just kind of, it was like a generational curse, generational pattern that just...
So there's a parental programming going on, not intentionally, but it's still occurring. And you're buying it because you don't see yourself like others. We're comparing ourselves with each other, and we're also getting programmed from our parents, of all places, that, hey, maybe we need to really watch our weight and our figure and everything like that at a very young age. We're not talking about 20. We're talking about 8, 9 years of age, right? Okay, so when you get into this, the one thing that strikes me in just eating orders usually caves in to self-hatred. You know, you talk about this. When I first asked you on the phone, I was like, talk to me about that, because most people at 8 or 9 or 10 years old are not conscious about self-hatred. How did that happen at such a young age?
I don't know. I believe that it was, I believe it was a demonic attack from a very early on age for me, that the thoughts came into my head and they wouldn't leave. They kept attacking me, and I believed it. I believed this lie that I was never going to be good enough, and I hated myself for that.
When you think about it, how does that manifest when you're a young gal?
I think it just makes you want to hide. It makes you insecure. It makes you fearful. It makes you feel just insignificant.
When you're marginalized at a young age, and especially if it's self-loathing by yourself, right? I mean, you're doing this, right? And you're having self-hatred. You're wondering, hey, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm not the kind of person that's ever going to have the perfect life. I don't have the perfect body. I don't have the perfect relationships, and it's not all that great at home because they don't know how to help me understand emotion and feeling, and they have their own problems doing it as well.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so now we have as you said, now we're in the second generation. This is where I've said before with many of our guests that come on the show, we have to, it's not only the person that's coming on the show giving their story like Blake is today, but it's so many things that can stop. You're a mother now. You have 2 children. I mean, hey, you don't want to pass this down to those kids, right?
No, I do not.
So the luggage that we have, we want to dump before we get into a marriage relationship, before we get into having kids, all that. Well, we don't want to go there yet. We've got we've got to walk over. Okay, now the reason I want to talk about this is in the meantime, while you have this, you kind of discovered you have a singing voice during all this.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Well, I mean, Britney Spears was like my favorite person. And I would just mimic her songs, and then I was like, oh, I think I sound pretty good. And then people would be like, oh my gosh, you sound like her. And so I think that kind of started just like this and my mom could sing, you know, all the girls on my dad's side of the family can sing. So it's in the family. And I never really, but to be honest, I think after I hit about, you know, like a young adulthood, I kind of stopped singing, and I was kind of afraid because of the fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being the best. I kind of just stopped singing, and no one really knew I could sing. No one really knew unless I would like tell someone, but I was kind of secretive about it.
I've noticed that in the Hollywood scene and very much in the music scene, the scene that I was in and so forth, that there's a lot of problems behind great talent. I mean, the voice is great, the look is great, and yet there's so much trauma and pain going on, and people, when you're dealing with when you have eating disorders, which is a huge problem for young gals, right?
Yeah.
And this could put them out. I mean, we've had people that have taken it to the most extreme. The one that I saw at one of the prisons, when that girl walked in at 89 pounds, that's a problem.
Yes.
And she's 5'4".
Yes.
So we're talking major problems here. So we know that things that are eating at us inside are causing us to manifest itself on the outside by denial of food, going on days and days without eating, drinking only water.
Yes, well, I struggled with anorexia and bulimia. And so I came to the conclusion just recently that because I was so shut out as a young kid that I didn't really have a voice, I felt like I didn't have a voice, that I had to get it out somehow. And I felt like the bulimia was kind of me unintentionally getting rid of all the darkness in me that I wasn't able to say this out loud to anyone. And so being able to, and looking back, this is how I look at it, but as a kid, you don't know what you're going through. You're having all these hormones raging through your body. It's very hard.
I totally get that, and I understand that when you're looking at things from a child's point of view, it can be completely distorted. And so when we come back from the break, we're going to continue on Blake's story, and this is something that you may want to think about now. Maybe your kids are going through eating disorders. Maybe they're into self-hatred. You don't know, why is your kid so down on themselves? How come they can't find any peace, any reconciliation of who they are? This could be a big thing for your kids too. So while you're listening to this story all this week, Monday through Friday, we're going to bust out and unpack Blake's story. When we come back, we're going to continue in her story in episode 1 here, right after the break.
Is that okay?
Good. Did you throw up? Did you throw up? Okay, I want to go there.
Just go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. If you can't get to BFF on Friday nights, or you don't live in the Phoenix area, you can stay connected by joining BFF's Subscribe Tribe, where you'll receive their weekly study guide, so you can track with them online. Just sign up today on BFF's website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. And don't forget to listen to BFF's weekly video podcast with Debbie G. and Sheridan. Their own life experience and their biblical influence will overhaul your thinking, your identity, and your future. They'll keep you encouraged with some great insight and biblical truth. Just friend them on Facebook or go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. BFF, where you might just discover a best friend forever.
That's right, and it may be Jesus. That's right. There'll be plenty of sisters there that you can embrace, and if you're not doing anything Friday night, just hop out there to their site, Beyond Fear to Freedom. Check out the Friday night info, the church, the address, the time, food fellowship, child care is provided. I know that's a big one. Please, we're unpacking today and all this week Blake Dallariva's unbelievable story. And I just want to say, when I have met so many gals in prison and jail, when they were little and they noticed what they thought was a non-conforming body. Their body wasn't conforming to the image. There's somebody that's pumping an image into us, right? We have this very false image of us, this perfectionism, right? And you start to do things you only know to do at the time, because nobody's doing dope yet at 8 and 9 years old. So we're doing other things. We're forcing ourselves to vomit, right? And you went through this period as well. Yes.
I didn't even know why. I never really saw anyone do it, or, I wanted to, every time I would eat, I would just think, if I keep it in my body, I'm going to get fat. And so I would just try to throw it up, and it was just this cycle. And my dad actually caught me once, and the only thing that he said was, if you don't stop doing this, we're going to send you away somewhere. That was it. There was no, hey, honey, what's going on?
Let's go see a doctor.
Yeah, are you okay? Like, talk to me. I was scolded, and fear was placed in me, and after that, I just shut down even more.
This is a trauma issue. I mean, I don't know if you've watched the Golden Globe winning Netflix The Crown series, where they feature Princess Diana and her huge problem with eating disorders and going to the bathroom every time she ate. And puking it up.
Yep.
So this is not something, not just for normal people like us. This is all the way up the food chain, even into royalty. People struggle with self-image, and I say 90% of this stuff happened when Hollywood took over the culture.
Absolutely.
I want our kids to get their image, their examples from the Holy Bible, not Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Amen.
all right. So, you know what? We want to know why people do this. We're talking some of this, and you're saying if your child comes to you, the last thing you want to do is say we're going to send you off and get rid of you, right? We want to say, let's go to the doctor. Let's see what happens. Before even that, though, you may want to come to the Lord. You look, there's people that understand this. There's people like even at BFF. People have been there, like yourself and other people that go there. They understand these things, and they'll walk you through their problems and things that they did.
Well, and I don't want to sit here and bash my parents because they did the best they could. You know, they weren't believers. They didn't understand like how to help me, and I'm not mad anymore at it. Like they did the best they could, and I appreciate that they were uncomfortable with emotions. They didn't know how to deal with it. So, I think being a believer is and being parents, believers, being a parent of a child that is a believer is so important because you teach them early on that their identity is in Christ. It's not in the world.
But you already had some anger, and now you might even be angry a little bit at mom and dad back in the day that, hey, they're not taking care of you or helping you with this.
Yeah.
You finally your dad finds out, and you didn't really feel like he went enough or far enough.
Or if I would say to my mom, I feel fat, she'd say, oh, just stop it. And it's like, I can't stop it. You know, and that was where I got shut out. It was like, what you're feeling is not valuable here. Just stop talking.
In my convention work, where I got to go around the United States and so forth, I saw many guys in the speakers, before they got up in the podium, sitting in the wheelchair stall, wrapping their stomachs with duct tape. Now, at first, this is a humorous thought, right? But they're doing it because they felt they were paunchy. They had a little bit of a midlife belly. They didn't want it, and they were trying to make their shape more athletic, more V. They were so not happy with themselves, but they had also an inability to exercise and eat the right foods.
Yeah.
So now, I just found out a whole new use for duct tape, right? And so when we think about it, we think about women have this problem, but really men do too.
Oh, yeah.
They just stuff it in a different way.
And it's almost not acceptable for men to have a problem like that, you know?
Well, yeah. What's with that?
Well, it's not acceptable for men to cry either.
Well, too late for that.
Yeah.
Well, did you have any friends that were going through the same thing? Did you ever meet any of your friends? Hey, man, I feel like I'm fat, and they would tell you, no, you're not.
Yeah, all the time. But I just never believed them. And the thing is, I'm 5'7", I'm tall, and all my friends were like 5 foot, very tiny, petite girls. So I already felt large next to them. So, when they would tell me, oh, you're not fat, I'd be like, whatever. What do you know?
Right.
You're like this tiny little thing, and I would just get more angry. This anger was just building and building and building.
It's interesting because usually the flip side is, hey, I have a gal that's 5'7", blonde, blue eyes. That's model material.
Yeah.
Right? But that never crossed your mind.
No.
See, that to me is the shocker of part of your story here is somebody didn't wake up and say, oh, and on the contrary, on the other hand, being 5'7" is a pretty good thing on the runway.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So people go through this. You've met friends that have went through this. You have met adults that are going through this. They're never happy with their body. Now, look, I want to get to the place where we're treating our temple the way we should. We want to be able to be an honoring to God, right? But we don't want this to become such an image issue. Now, when you're sitting there, image issues are so huge when you're starting your dating run, right?
Yes,
This is a whole nother planet now.
Yes.
Right, it's one thing for your own self-loathing over your own body, and because you're an athlete and you feel like you should be flat stomach. You can do all the planks you want, and it's not going to help, right? But now you're dating now. What's the self-image there?
Well, it's interesting because I always attracted people, so I didn't have an issue with attracting men, but I just never felt. I still felt like I wasn't good enough. So when I would attract the men, the boys, really, it was more of like a vain thing. So it was like there's one end of the spectrum where I'm feeling so low about myself, but then it's like I have to exalt this vanity in me to almost kind of counteract the insecurity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. When you're awake, to your own beauty and the magnetism that it has, it could be great or it could be awful, right?
Well, and I developed early, so I had, body parts of a woman, and so I think that was what, kind of gave me a head further than the other girls, because they weren't, they're flat chested and things like that. So I think I started to see that it was a way of manipulation for me early on.
I would love all of us listening to this. I'm a dad. I got 6 kids. 4 of them are girls. I would do things differently, right? We raised in Christian home, and it was good. But I think I could have done way better on this area that we're talking about right now. And I want image to be something of the inner person. I remember we had a guest on a couple weeks back, and her father was saying, you'll always be a success because of the way you look. Had nothing to do with the way she is.
Right.
Doesn't matter about her talents or gifts or her strong work ethic or anything like that. It'll be the way she looks. And that's all she got from him. You look great, and that's all.
Yeah.
So when you're starting the dating scene, you know guys are attracted to you. That's a good. Well, could be a good thing, right?
I suppose.
I suppose. And you have a singing voice now. You'd like to use it, right?
I was very shy. And that was another thing. So this brought into the insecurity. I was very shy. I always was super socially awkward. But I had a lot of friends. I was, hanging out with a lot of people, but I was just so uncomfortable in my own skin. I hated myself, and I just wanted to. I tried to put on this tough guy persona. So all the girls didn't want to mess with me, and all the guys knew. I just had this tough guy persona, because I didn't want people to see that I was like weak, or that I had I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was, but I had to put off that I was unapproachable.
I think sometimes we put on a veneer or a mask of hardness.
Yes.
Your image of hardness starts to affect your real heart.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your real heart becomes hard.
I almost think I was trying to be rejected first, so that I was rejecting myself first, so then I wouldn't have to be rejected.
This is another whole issue of self-sabotage. We talk about this with the people that come through this show. I just see so many people. You have talent, you have beauty, you have skill sets, and yet we're sitting here talking about something so degrading, and it isn't coming from the outside so much. The actual condemnation and judgment is coming from the inside.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to really, when I'm thinking about this, Blake, I want you to, when you're sharing about your story, because you're going to say, well, Steve, you haven't really gotten into anything really bad. Well, this is bad. I don't know how else to say this. We're going to be talking in the next couple of days about really bad things of drug addiction and things of this nature. But if we could have got the front end of this, if we could have attacked it at the front end, this could be totally a change. So I just want to encourage everyone. If you have kids that are going through this, image issues, don't play around. Get the people with other people that believe like you, kindred spirit, know how to pray, know how to use the Bible, and good doctors that are really affectionate towards your family and want to see the right thing done. I really think you need to go this way. Now, when we're looking at, and again, I talked about this self-hatred lasted all the way into your early 20s.
Yes.
I mean, this is what is amazing. It's like, I was told during my time, when at the orphanage, the priest came to us and said, it's not your fault that you're here. Well, I never thought it was my fault, right? I was 9 years old. I was like, hey, the guy's trying to give me a problem. I already got problems. Don't give me another one, right? So, but we have people that always struggle with this, that self-image, hatred, and when you hear the reasons why they do it, you just go, how could they? There's probably people, when they watch the YouTube version of this, is, Blake, you look so beautiful, and what is your problem? But yet, beauty has nothing to do with pain and agony that we're talking about. Well, listen, all this week we'll be unpacking Blake's story, so you won't want to miss a single episode. And don't forget to check out BFF on Friday night at 5:30 for food and fellowship, 6:15 for some of the best sharing you've ever experienced. Childcare is provided. And for more information, just go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. So until next time, I'm Steve Savant, and remember, no one's outside the reach of God. No, not one.